Brace the rudders! Raise the sails! Raise the sails!
Captain, an unidentified ship is approaching. Over.
Roger. Wait, is that an enterprise sales solution?
Reach sales professionals, not professional sailors. With LinkedIn ads, you can target the right people by industry, job title, and more. We'll even give you a $100 credit on your next campaign. Get started today at linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply.
Hey, it's Paris. You know I love sparkly things, right? Like stars. Duh. And thanks to Hilton and AutoCamp, I just slept under them. Picture me, serving looks by the fire outside my luxurious Airstream, making s'mores with the kids, while a national park is our backdrop. The great outdoors meets Hilton hospitality. That's hot. Explore all the new ways to stay at Hilton.com. Hilton for the stay.
Troops in contact. Target compound.
Combat, it's killing. That's what it is. And it's done in an environment that is often as difficult as you can. Possibly imagine. Extremes of climate. It's uncivilized, and women can't do it. The requirements for strength and endurance render them unable to do it. Doesn't work.
I knew the moment I stepped in over there at Bragg, I was like, we are being watched and something bigger is shaking out, I guarantee it.
You're looking at each other. Is she as tough as I am?
It was a bunch of female alphas.
You're doing this for every other woman that's going to come after you. Any argument that a man's going to have about why women shouldn't be allowed to be here, don't contribute one iota.
I thought, war? What are you doing here?
It was a man's club. Like, that is the lion's den that we just walked into.
For 8 years of a war, we didn't see the other half of a target book.
You bring a white man in a very intimidating US uniform. A lot of women will feel uncomfortable.
We're gonna go into that darkness and just be like, you need this done? Okay, let's go.
This is not what I was expecting at all.
Nobody cares if you're a man or a woman. You are defined by your actions purely.
Having this one woman on target freed up probably 4 guys.
I would have liked to have seen that play out a little bit.
I start to wonder if you're there too long, if whatever gains you made start to erode themselves, and soon you leave in the same place you started. What does winning look like?
War's not stopping. How long has America been around? How many wars we've been in? Conflicts? Only thing changing is the date.
All right. Welcome back.
Misfit Nation. Misfit Nation. The Misfit Nation show.
We are a show founded by a veteran and hosted by 2 veterans and a military spouse. Our mission is to get people to tell their stories to the world. If you're an author, share your tips with the Misfit Nation. If you're a musician or an actor, our audience needs to know how they too can get into the business. Coaches, we love our coaches. Come on and share your tips with the Misfit Nation to help them become better versions of themselves. If you are a corporate leader or an entrepreneur, come on and show how you did it and how hard you have fought for success. If you are a veteran, first responder, or Gold Star family, we would love to have you come on and share your story with the Misfit Nation. We always have time for you. If you're feeling down, alone, are starting to see the darkness, stop. Think about those who are around you. You are not alone. You will be missed. If you feel like your problems will be a burden to those in your inner circle or feel embarrassed, dial 988. If you are a veteran, take option 1. We need you to keep pushing forward. Don't make a permanent solution to a temporary problem. If you are a new listener, welcome to the Misfit Nation show. Be sure to subscribe to our show on your favorite podcast app. Also on our YouTube channel at @the_MisFitNation. Subscribe and click the bell to keep you up to date on our latest episodes and all of our news. You can also find us on Heroes Media Group and About Face Radio. Now, let's get to the show!
All right. Welcome back to the Misfit Nation show, Thursday after dinner show. We hope you had a great first part of your week. You checked out the Tuesday crew on Tuesday with a great guest, Janine Smith. A great conversation was had there. And, of course, our Sunday show was awesome as well. Tonight is no different. We have an awesome guest tonight. He's a celebrated author and storyteller behind The Old Grandmother's Tree. His captivating tales and insightful writing promise to enrich you with inspiration and thought-provoking conversations, captivating and engaging every one of you in the stream here to come on and ask questions. So without further ado, let's welcome Mr. Joseph Bolton to the Misfit Nation show. Welcome, Joseph.
Oh, hello, Rich. I'm happy to be here tonight.
It's great to have you here. We were talking in the green room. You did some schooling right there in New Jersey, the motherland of where I'm from, and now you're just outside of Boston. So you're still a Northeastern guy, and you're wearing the Alouettes hat there for Canadian Football League, which is a great pride for you. And they won the reigning championship. Not sure if I can remember if you said they won a championship a couple years ago, but they did go to the championship, and it's great to have you here, Joseph.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Like I told you in the green room, I'm only going to give about a 2-sentence introduction on you, because this show is more about you than it is about me. I want you to tell the Misfit Nation as much as you want to tell them, from as far back as you want to go to how we got to this point now.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess I'll start back in high school. How did I get in the Army? And so in high school, I was a pretty smart kid, but I was very lazy. I would never do my homework. I didn't like to put the effort into it, and I could get away with it because I was kind of smart. And but I wasn't really ready to put the effort into college. So my father suggested that instead of going into college right away, I do a couple of years in the Army and kind of grow up a little bit, just take a break from school and then come back and go to college. And so I did a 2-year enlistment. And when I went to the recruiter, I told him I wanted to be an engineer someday. And so he said, okay, great. I got just the job for you. I'm going to make you a combat engineer. I go, what does a combat engineer do in the Army? Oh, well, they build bridges, they blow things up, a demo, and then they drink a lot of beer in the woods afterwards. Well, of course, it's not what it's about at all. But, I enlisted. I did my basic AIT training over at Fort Leonard Wood in Missouri. And during basic training, one night after we were done shooting on the range, the drill sergeant called us all together and said, there was a plane crash at airborne school. And so we're in great need of volunteers to replenish the school. So who wants to be an airborne paratrooper? So, of course, I raised my hand. And I mean, at the time I was 18. I didn't know if he was telling me the truth. Of course he wasn't, but maybe he was just trying to screen out the weaklings or people who were going to be scared about that. But I did it. So I went to airborne school, and then I went to Fort Bragg. And while I was in basic training, they pulled maybe about 7 of us out of the 120 in my basic training company. And they said, hey, you guys have a high enough ASVAB score. Would you like to be interested in try the West Point Preparatory School, which is a school for enlisted soldiers to go to get their academics cleaned up a little bit and strengthened before they get selected to go to West Point. So I thought about it for a moment, and at first I was like, nah, I don't want to go back to school. But then I thought, what am I doing? It's an opportunity. And so I applied. I wrote my essay that I had to write. I wrote it in the latrine at night after everyone goes to sleep, because in the basic training, they didn't give me any time. So I'm scribbling this stuff, sitting on the toilet, with this yellow lined paper, and I'm trying to scribble out an essay about why I wanted to go to the West Point Prep School. And after that, I went to jump school, and while I was at Fort Bragg, I found out that I was accepted. And so I transferred over there, still in the Army. We were at the prep school. I went to Fort Monmouth, New Jersey. I loved it. I made good friends. And it's a 10-month school. And 9 months, 2 weeks. It was on a Tuesday, about 11:30. I think it was May 8th. I got a call down with about several other cadet candidates, as we were called, to the commandant's office. And it turns out they said, I'm sorry, but you're not going to West Point. All of us. And I said, and everyone's reason was different. My reason was not academics. It was because I needed a medical waiver for my eye. And so I didn't even get to graduate from that course. Didn't even get to say goodbye to my classmates as they moved on to West Point. So I ended my time in the Army, a couple months, only 2-year enlistment. My time came up. I went to Norwich University for a year. And while I was there, I had this dream that I was back at West Point, and I was seeing my classmates from the prep school. And then in the dream, somebody came up to me and says, I'm sorry, but you have to leave. And I said, why? He says, well, you didn't write to your congressman time and reapply, so you didn't make it. And so I woke up the next day and I said, based on my age, I have 1 more year to do this. And so I reapplied, got my eyes cleaned up, and got accepted into West Point. And so I was one of those very rare people to actually, I was a prep school guy, didn't graduate from the prep school, and went to West Point, but didn't go with my prep school classmates. So they were a year ahead of me. So they were very shocked to see me show up later. So I did 4 years at West Point. Then I was an infantry officer because my uncle, who was a Vietnam veteran, says, if you're going to be in the Army, you got to be infantry. Soldier. I don't know if I totally agree with that now, based on the Army is today. There's a lot of important jobs in the military, but that's what I believe. So that's what I did. I went to Army Ranger School. So I graduated there, went to Fort Drum. I was infantry, and then when I got promoted to major, I decided to transfer out, and I became a space operations officer. A very small group. I think there were only 60 of us in the entire Army. And while I was a space operations officer, I went back to Fort Drum back to Fort Drum on the general staff, and I did a year in Afghanistan as a space operations officer. And the vast majority of stuff that I did there was highly classified. So I do have stories, but they're not combat stories. They're not stories about anything I accomplished, because I really can't talk a lot of it. It was highly classified work. So, but I retired right after that, and worked for the most time as a government contractor, first in New York, then outside of Boston. And a couple of years ago, I decided I just needed a break, and I actually left the contracting world, and I took a job as a mathematics teacher at a little Catholic school in Gardner, Massachusetts, and I loved that job. But after a semester, I realized that I probably did it a little too early. I still needed a little extra money, especially because I was writing my books, Old Grandmother's Tree, which was a very, it's a very expensive project. And so I got a phone call, says, hey, we want you back. We'll throw you a big pile of money. Come on back. And so I've been working ever since. But I definitely wanted to go back teaching fairly soon. And so that's how I got it. That was my whole Army career, 25 years, one way or the other, in about a 2-minute speech.
That's awesome.
And, yeah. So I could talk a little bit about my old grandmother's tree, but do you have any questions based on my Army career, how that went, or?
No, it is a different story than you'll ever hear someone tell you about how they got into West Point. definitely a different tale, a different lineage or different path, I should say. Because you have the guys that do the traditional way, high school right to West Point. Then there's the guys that do what you did first to go to in the Army, sign up for the prep school, get to the prep school, and then go through. But you had to take an additional step and go through that. That's an amazing journey right there. And to still be resilient and say, yeah, you know what? I have 1 year left. I'm going to go. I'm going to do this anyway. And I'm going to be the old man on campus. I'm going to do this. And that had to be the fun, even more fun part of it, being the older guy on campus. I'm sure some people called you Pops and stuff in there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Actually, they did. There were a couple of classmates of mine that called me Papa Joe is what they called me. And I was 25 years old when I finally graduated from West Point. I just barely made it. Wow. So I was almost the age of some captains out there in the Army at 25 when I graduated.
Yes.
So, and I had an okay career. I don't think I did anything spectacular, at least from my perspective. But I did my job. I spent the time in Afghanistan. I'm glad that I made some good contacts and friends out there as well. I'm glad I had a opportunity a few times to actually interact with the Afghan people, and it's something that I'm always going to treasure.
Right.
So. But none of that really has anything to do with my book. The book, Old Grandmother's Tree, is actually a very different kind of project.
Tell us a little about that.
So when ever since I was a child, I was always very interested in my family history, and especially my mom's side. All four of my mother's grandparents were all born in Quebec. So early on, knew that we were, Quebec is where we come from. And so I had always had a lot of questions with my grandparents and my great aunts about, where do we come from as the family? And there's only so much they could tell us back then, except that we were French and we were come from Quebec. And this is back like in the 70s. And later on, of course, maybe within the last 8 years or so, all these tools came on to research your family history. Ancestry.com is one. DNA tests, and so I started doing research on our family, building a family tree into Quebec, and I gave my mother and 5 of her siblings a DNA test, and that's where we had the first kind of surprise and discovery.
All right.
So growing up, we always were told we're 100% French, at least my mother's side of the family, 100% French Canadian. Well, it turns out we're probably closer to like 80%. 85, 90% French, so mostly French, but there's a little bit of English in there, there's a little bit of Spanish in there, but also to our surprise that there was also Native American DNA also showed up, ancestry showed up in the DNA tests, and that was a surprise to us. And it took me 2 years to find those connections, who these people were, and I found 4 gateway ancestors, Native American ancestors, up in Quebec and Maine. And of them, probably the one whose story was most intriguing was an Algonquin woman who lived in the mid-1600s. She was my 9th great-grandmother. Her name was Mitio Goku. And her story turns out to be very well documented by the Jesuit priests in Trois-Rivières. And she had an incredible story. A very dramatic story in her life. And it starts off, she comes into the record when she's about 22 years old. She's married to another Algonquin. They have 2 small children, a boy and a girl. And the Mohawks came up and raided Trois-Rivières in Quebec. And during that raid, her husband, Assabavich, was killed, and her 2 small children were kidnapped, and she never saw them again. So at 22, she lost everything. Her husband, her children, and where do you a lot of people may fall into despair or become cynical, but she didn't and 5 years later she married a French settler named Pierre Cauque, and they became my ancestors. And she lived this life, and we have some documentation about where her and her second husband lived, my ancestors. But at the end of her life, right after she died, the priest of Trois-Rivières wrote this about her. And he said, I quote, Mitio Goku lived a full life with love, dignity, and respect. A loving and courageous Algonquin woman. And it's a very powerful 2-line eulogy. And there's so much in there. And when you think about it, that what kind of impression she had to make by the end of her life, an impression she made to the people around her, that a priest would write this about a woman at the end of the 17th century, much less a native woman in Canada. So she really had to make that impression, and that she lived a full life, which tells me that she lived in a life of action and interaction with her community. She lived a life of dignity and respect. She maintained, her sense of personhood and importance, and understood who she was. But she was also a courageous woman, ready to build her life again. And she was also a loving woman. And I think any of us would do well to have that eulogy said about us in sincerity when we die. So I took those 2 lines and the facts of her life, and I retold her story in the Old Grandmother's Tree book series. But now, there are many people who write stories and novels about their ancestors, especially if they have notable ancestors. They write stories about them. So, and that part is not unusual. But what I did was a little different. I took the story of Mitio Goku and her life and her family, and I retold it in the language of folk tales and folklore. So, I told it in a reimagined Quebec with folk tales, Native American trickster animal characters, a little bit of magic. So a little bit of a fantasy and also real history. And I seamlessly blend that in there to a story, or actually a series of stories, 10 stories in the 2 volumes. And because I'm a very visual person, I teamed up with a wonderful artist named Natasha Pelly-Smith out of Toronto, and she actually worked and did the illustrations. And I also worked with a storyboard artist to assist us named Masami Kiyono out of Manhattan. She does storyboards for commercials. And so 3 of us teamed up and created this book. And it was probably, I'd say it was at least a 3-year project from beginning to end.
Wow. That's a long project to stay with too. And to stay focused, forward focused on to finish it. I'm sure there was hiccups along the way, but it looks like you've had fun doing it.
I definitely had fun. And, I think that I was very fortunate to find Masami Kiyono, the artist that worked in the book, and Natasha Pelly-Smith, very creative young people. And, we became very close as a team, and we really, all 3 of us really believed in this project. And it took thousands of hours of work, of writing on my part. There's 450 illustrations in these two volumes. So every illustration was carefully designed and created. And when you look at them, you see how Natasha created a 3-dimensionality and a palette of colors that really brings the stories to life. And there really isn't any other book out there like that. It's almost like a graphic novel,
right?
But it has far more text than a graphic novel. There's 40,000 words inside these 2 volumes.
Wow.
And 450 illustrations. So there's really... if you have a graphic novel, you have a lot of illustrations, but you don't have 40,000 words.
Right.
You don't have text like that. So to merge it's almost a novella-sized story with 450 illustrations, it's something new. It's very unique, and everyone who's had a chance to look at most people, I tell them about the story, they're like, what is this? What kind of book is this? But when they actually get their hands on it and start flipping through the pages, they're like, wow, this is great. You can see the amount of work that went into creating these books.
Got 2 questions from the audience right now.
Sure.
This one, I think you've answered this one already. Pretty sure you have. At Kim Friends, what sparked your decision to capture French-Canadian stories in your book series? Thank you, Kim Friends.
Well, I again, fascinated with stories of my family history. And I think it was, I think it was Mitio Goku's story in particular that became the seed, the starting point for these stories. Not every story is about her, but all the stories mention her in some way. Almost all the stories mention her in some way because she is kind of like the core of the whole book series. But, I thought she lived an incredible life. When somebody could say she lived a life of dignity, respect, it was a story that I wanted to retell, and I also wanted to honor her with the stories as well.
Awesome. This one is from Lemon Drop Soup. How did your time in the military shape your storytelling perspective?
That's a good question. That's a very good question. I think, based on the description described the stories, they don't really have anything to do with the military. But I would say the military has affected me in probably one key aspect, especially when I went to Afghanistan, and I was exposed to, the death of people, in the military and on our side. I've seen, videos of other people dying in combat out there in Afghanistan. And it's given me a perspective of just how fragile life is. And I know that sounds like a truism. Everybody says it, but it really is. And, life is it can be short. It can end sooner than you think and unexpectedly. And I think the way it impacts my storytelling is that I really wanted to leave something of myself of value behind after I'm gone, whenever that is. And I wanted this book series to be kind of a testament of who I was as a person, kind of by reflection within the stories. And, also a testament of my values, the values of family, of love, the love of storytelling, the love of sharing stories with your family. Those are the values that I wanted to leave behind. And I think my military experience kind of put that in sharper focus of it's important to do that while you have a chance to do something and leave something behind.
Definitely. And we touched on it earlier about you taking this project and it taking so much of your time. Has it taken on a life of its own? Did you foresee the scope of this when you first started, and where do you see it going from here?
Well, no, actually, I wrote the very first story. It was La Trope de Sabot. It was of what became the book. The very first story didn't actually contain Mitio Goku, but there were hints of her in the story. It's kind of hard to explain, but I wrote this one story about my great-grandparents' farm in Quebec, and the farm animals sneak out at night, take the toboggan, and go sledding down the hill at midnight under a sky full of the Northern Lights. And that was the first story. But then I realized that looking at it, I said, there's other aspects that kind of like tunnel into other stories. For example, the shawl that my great-grandmother is wearing. It has the color of the Northern Lights. Well, why does it? Well, because it's magical and it belonged to Mitio Goku, who's her ancestor. And so that aspect became the kind of like the little bit of string that you kind of pull on, a little bit of a thread, and it leads you to other stories. So when I actually first started it, I did not think it was going to be as big as it was. But the story kind of grew on its own. And now I have 3 other books in the series in the works, and Natasha is going to start the next book in the series next month, early June, and I'm working with Masami to storyboard the story after that. And the third story is I've just started writing, but the next book is actually going to come out by the end of the summer, I expect, and the book after that, which tells about the end of Mitio Goku's life, will be next summer.
All right. I mean, I can't wait to see where it moves from. I know you're not going to want to end it. You're going to want to start something else right after it, just based on your tenacity going so far. And we do have another question in the chat right now. There it is. At Climb to Glory 4, what do you think young people gain from learning ancestral folklore today? Thank you, Climb to Glory.
I think that most young people have a little bit of sense of awareness. They have a sense that they are part of a story. but they see where they are. They see that they're kind of at that end of that story, but they don't know where that story began, but they feel like they're part of that story. And that yearning is at the questions they ask about their family history. And I think the value of reflecting and researching your family is understanding where you came from, and it tells you about how you fit into the broader world. And you are the continuation of the story of your ancestors. So Mitio Goku's story doesn't end with her death. It continues on through her descendants, like myself and my children and her other descendants. And the same thing with children. Children, you should understand, is that they are the continuation of the story of their ancestors.
Definitely, and I think you hit this earlier with all the new avenues now to find out your ancestors. It's a lot easier for the youth of today, based as compared to us when we were growing up. You have to go to the library or to archives to try to find where and when your ancestors either came to America or came to Canada, or where they came from the old country. You had to do everything on foot and by hand and write notes down and go through the Dewey Decimal System and all that stuff and find stuff. Now they can do, like you said, look on Ancestry.com, find out if someone else maybe has already started the tree and get in there. Do you feel that's an asset for them now, or is it kind of makes it too easy for them?
No, I think it's absolutely an asset, and it's not too easy. It's important, and it's such a gift that we have this capability now today. When I was growing up, I think one of my great aunts had researched just one line of my family tree back to the 1600s. So we just had this one little tiny little sliver of that ancestry. There was a whole world we didn't understand. So I think it's wonderful that we actually have these tools.
Definitely. And you said earlier that you want to get back to teaching. You love teaching, but you also said you weren't a good student. And it's usually the person who wasn't a good student that becomes the better teacher, because you work harder to get the grades and you learn a lot better because you have to go back and do stuff. Do you think teaching is in your future after you get done with all the projects, or maybe you can do both at the same time?
Well, I intend to keep writing the books as long as the ideas are there. And I'll do that whether I'm teaching or not. But I would say that I have already reached out to Holy Family Academy out in Gardner and said that I was interested in coming back. And so we'll see where that goes. But it was a very special time for me. That was like one of the best jobs I ever had. I enjoyed being with the kids. I felt like I was contributing to them, especially helping them with their math. That was my area that I taught while I was there. And I hope to go back.
That's outstanding. And we got a question basically about your teaching. It's from @Mark and Alex Forever. How did your brief time teaching affect your long-term goals? Thanks, Mark and Alex Forever.
I think when I had to leave at the end of a semester, I was very sad about that. But I do remember telling the principal that someday I do want to come back. And I don't know if she ever thought that. She probably thought, well, everybody says that, but I really did. I really wanted to come back. So that's always been a goal, was to return. And I think teaching is something that, I definitely want to return to. And I think it also, these books are also appropriate for children to be read to by their parents and grandparents. And so I think that these books are a good teaching tool as well.
It's always good to have a new teaching tool based on what we have going on in the world today. You can always read the old books, but it's always good to have something fresh for them to read that also isn't going to be, divisive or anything, or hurt their minds while they're reading it.
No, these books are, what's really good about them is that they're entertaining, that as an adults read these books and they like them. They find them entertaining, they find them thoughtful, they find them poignant, but kids also love these books as well. Not only they love the illustrations, but they're very much touched by the stories. They can sense, the goodness of family and the family love that are contained within the stories itself. And they are entertaining. They are funny. I mean, there's a little bit of slapstick in some of the stories with the animals. And So definitely, I think that's why it kind of ties in with teaching for me. I see it as part of teaching enrichment of children.
Now I have to ask, in your books, have you based any of your characters, your animals, trickster animal characters, on any real people that you I guess encountered in life through military, through all the other chapters of your life?
Not so much the military, but I definitely based them on partly on myself.
Okay.
I mean, some of the characters, what they say, are definitely me. There's two trickster animal characters that are very mischievous. One is named Mewan the bear, and his brother Azaban the raccoon, and they go on adventures together, and they get into trouble. Very kind of childish, mischievous kind of trouble. And I based them on myself and my brother David, my late brother David. And because when we were kids, we would do those kind of things. We would cause mischief and get in trouble. So they're kind of based on myself and my brother. And there's another character named Uncle McKeish, who's a turtle, a very old turtle. And he has a nephew who's a moose named Poku. And they do this, in one part of the book, they do this walk through the woods towards their home, back home to Mount Orford. And they're having this conversation about, Uncle McKeish is feeling kind of sad on himself. I'm getting old. I can't do all the things I used to be able to do. I repeat all my stories. You must be getting tired of me. He's telling all this to his nephew, and his nephew isn't going to have any of this. His nephew said, you know what? I don't care about all that stuff. You are the best uncle to me, and I love you. And in that story, I'm both Poku and McKeish. Because I'm older than, I have nephews and nieces in my 30s. I'm like Uncle McKeish when I talk to them. But I also have my mother's siblings who are still around, or in their, their 80s. And in that sense, I'm also Poku, the younger nephew, who's remembering and trying to be patient and loving with my older aunts and uncles. So in that aspect, it's also based, and that's like one of my, that's in the second book, and it's like one of my favorite chapters in the whole book.
Awesome. We got one more question just popped in from at Saran Susan. I guess they're Susan Sarandon fans. Populate here. Here it is. What's the story behind your favorite folk tale from Old Grandmother's Tree? Thanks, Sarah Susan.
Favorite folk tale. Well, I would say the favorite folk tale is definitely the first one, and that is called "All Around You There Is a Light." And in that story, Mityo Goku's grandparents, specifically her grandfather, goes to the local church in Trois-Rivières and prays for his granddaughter, because she knows she needs to do. She's been a widow now for 5 years, and he prays for her that she'll be able to find a husband that will love her, and that they can live a beautiful life together and have a family again. And but in that story, I also have it's very very thoughtful as this man prays for his granddaughter. But I also have to introduce the trickster animal characters as well. And so that, I think, is probably my favorite because it's the first one. And it really shows how that one little spark, that love of a grandfather, kicks off the whole story of itself.
Awesome. That's outstanding. Where can people get your book or maybe learn more about them?
Well, I do have a website, and it's oldgrandmotherstree.com. And I also, the books can also be found on Amazon. And if you go to the Old Grandmother's Tree website, you will see links. I have a Wikipedia of all the characters. There's about over 100 entries in there. So there's a lot in there. There's a lot of characters. We have barely even touched all the stories and the characters that are in these books. So there's a Wikipedia right there. There's a sample illustrations of the book. There's a biography of myself, and also a biography of Natasha, the illustrator. And there's links there where you can buy the books on Amazon as well.
Awesome. So Misfit Nation, go to oldgrandmotherstree.com. Learn more about Joseph there. Buy the books, of course. And if you have questions for him, I'm sure the contact links are on there as well to get in contact with him and maybe pick his brain like we have been doing tonight. Joseph, this has been a very quick, almost 40 minutes now that we were talking about old your folklore tales, your military service, which was a roller coaster. Most people would have quit halfway through, not even halfway through that. They would have quit and went to the civilian world. You were almost a sapper, you were airborne, and then you became infantry and then a space officer. A space officer before Space Force. As soon as you said space, everyone probably thought Space Force, but that's a space officer before Space Force, which is a different breed now. So. And so I thank you for your service. And where were you in Afghanistan? Was it Bagram?
I was at Bagram, the old Russian Air Force Base.
Yeah, so, Disney Boulevard and all that stuff.
Yes, that's right. That's right, Disney Boulevard.
Yeah, I got to go there. Got to go there for a security class in 2011 in the winter, and I went from Kandahar to there, and it was night and day from Kandahar to there because it was still warm in Kandahar, and I got out there and it was snowing, so I didn't have any of the right clothes.
Yeah. A lot of people don't realize that it actually snows in Afghanistan, and we did have a snowy, very wet, damp winter out in Bagram. It kind of reminded me a little bit of Colorado Springs.
Yeah, it was pretty miserable for me the first day, but I met with some friends and got some good warm clothes and a good sleeping bag to stay in while I was up there, and then just had to make sure I got it back to me before I went back down south. Something we ask our guests, Joseph, before we let them leave is, what's 3 things that the Misfit Nation can start doing tomorrow to be better humans?
I think, first of all, is listen to your elders. I think a lot of us, we tend to forget our older relatives, and they're there. We visit them when they visit us. Sometimes maybe we may find them kind of annoying. Sometimes they may repeat their stories. But you need to listen to them, and you need to capture their wisdom and their stories while you can, because once they're gone, you'll miss them. So that's one. And the second one is kind of dovetails to that is talk to your children, spend time with them, put down the phone and put down, get away from the computer, take your children on adventures and help them create their stories for themselves. Take them on camping trips, take them on a mountain climbing, take an adventure, but adventures outside the house. And the third thing is, have a situational awareness around you of your neighbors and the people around you. Treat them with respect, dignity, and above all else, patience. And so I think those are the 3 things I would pass on.
That's outstanding. Just trying to make sure I get them all right in the chat so everyone can see them. That's the first time we had listen to your elders on there, and so that's a good one on there. And then, of course, talk to your children and turn off them devices. That's a huge one, especially for the generations now. That's they're babysat by the computer, the laptop, the screen on the back of their mom's headrest in the car, and people forget to talk to their children, and vice versa. The children don't even know how to speak to humans. So big one. That's a huge one right now. Joseph, thank you for taking your time tonight to hang out with us on the Misfit Nation. I wish you nothing but success as you move forward in your writing career, and of course, as you go back to Holy Family Academy. I'm giving that preemptive thing that you're going to go back and start teaching the youth again and mentoring them as they make their next journey in life as well.
All right, thank you. I was really glad to be here tonight.
It's an awesome chat. Misfit Nation, thanks for hanging out tonight on a Thursday night. I know you have plenty of other things you can do, but you hung out with us. Remember, we still have 3 days open for our Memorial Day week. If you have a story of someone you love we lost in combat or after service, reach out to us. Our emails are all in the chat. They're all on our website at themisfitnation.com. We'd love to get your story on here and have your loved one story shared. Till next time, Sunday night, we'll have Chance back on, and we'll have a great show from Louisiana. So everyone have a great night and be safe and be good to each other. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thanks for checking us out and being a part of the Misfit Nation show. Don't forget to visit our website at themisfitnation.com. That's themisfitnation.com. Check out all our past episodes and get some of the great Misfit Nation gear for you and your family. As always, be humble, stay hungry, and keep hustling, because we are
Misfit Nation. Misfit